My name is Nick Wagner Sr., and I am the creator of the Full Potential Podcast. Good evening, everyone. It's Nick Wagner Sr. here. Welcome to the second episode of the Full Potential live show. As I had mentioned, we're doing this every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Hopefully you can't hear the sleet in the background. I'm here in Connecticut, and it is sleeting outside and making a lot of noise on my windows. Hopefully you can't hear that. And I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to have Ray and Jennifer Smithberger on today's show. So thank you both of you for joining together at the same time. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Appreciate you having me.
No, and you know, I think I mentioned it when I posted the like the promo for this. We did the first one last week. It went super well. We had no technical difficulties at all. We had over 100 people watch it live. We had over 700 people watch the replay on LinkedIn. And Ray, like I had mentioned, we're going to go ahead and share this on my YouTube. I'm going to get the link to you as well. And then it's also going to turn it into my podcast, the Full Potential Podcast. And we are going to, it'll be shared on all major podcast platforms as well. So anyone that wants to hear Ray and Jennifer's career story will have the chance to hear it, whether it's by video or audio, whatever works for you guys. So and it looks like everything is working, guys. So we'll go ahead and get started. I got some people telling me that it is working and everything looks good. So why don't we just jump into it if that's all right with you guys?
Yeah, works great.
All right. So, and again, thank you for making time. I know both of you are very busy. You made time out of your busy schedule to join me for this and talk about your really, I think, unique career story. And what you're doing today with Seedership, your startup. So why don't we start with, if you guys could both introduce yourselves a little bit about, you know, yourself, Ray, and yourself, Jennifer, before we dive into what you wanted to, you know, do with Seedership and how you got there. So Jennifer, I don't know if you want to go first while Ray's sharing the LinkedIn post on LinkedIn.
Sure. So you want like a quick history that brought me here?
Just like a little bit about yourself, right? So like we don't have to do the full. We'll dive, I think, a little bit deeper into more about your career, but just a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Okay. So my background has been in public relations, corporate communications, kind of executive communication support in PR agencies, and then corporate for the last 12, 13 years. What kind of shifted me was this desire to see, do I have the potential to do more? I've spent more than 20 years specialized, becoming an expert, advisory in one area. And there's a desire is, can I do more? Have I limited myself to just one area? It's a desire to see, can I make a permanent impact to make the world a better place? And what would that look like if I did? So that's kind of what led me to Seedership.
That's so cool. And Ray, what about you?
Yeah. So I spent 20 plus years in the corporate world. Primarily focused on building and growing organizations, had a lot of great opportunities in my jobs to meet a lot of fantastic people, lead large organizations, work on really complex and big problems. And earlier this year in the spring, had an opportunity to join Jennifer on Seedership. I got to the point where I didn't want to look back and regret not trying something that I always wanted to do. And I'm sure we'll talk more about kind of what fell into place and allowed me to make that change happen. But that's over the last 6 months why I'm sitting in this chair today.
Yeah, and I, you know, we have a lot to discuss because, you know, both of you had really successful careers and then you know, decided to leave that career in the corporate world and branch out and you know, create a startup, which I think is fantastic. You're a husband and wife startup founding, you know, couple, which I think is also interesting, right? So I had a startup at one point. It was with 3 of my friends that I met in college, that I worked with in college. It was not my significant other, so we'll get into that. But why don't we start with what was the inspiration? Because Ray, you specifically just said you didn't want to regret not doing something that you always wanted to do. So was it, if we go back to, you know, little Ray and little Jennifer on the playground or in middle school or in high school, was your dream both to always own your own business, or did it kind of evolve over time? How did that work? Because it's not for everyone, and you guys both would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely agree with that I think when I was like a little, I didn't know that I necessarily wanted to have my own business. I grew up on a farm in Southeast Ohio. Ended up being the first person in my family to graduate from college and be able to venture off and explore some different things. As I got into my career, one of the things that I always did was I managed my career like using a GPS system in your car. I always had a destination that I wanted to get to, and that destination was running a business. And I didn't know if that was running a business in the corporate world, running a business on my own. But similar to that GPS analogy, I was able to create stops along the way to get me to my destination. So I knew that I wanted to do something, and I had the opportunity in my corporate job to be a part of running some pretty big businesses. And this was kind of like the next evolution in my GPS, was to look at trying to start something from ground up on my own.
And I think one thing on cedarship.com, which is the website for your business, you mentioned that you both have a lot of people that I think family members that have small businesses. So this is something that you both experienced with family as well.
Okay.
So I have, yes, I have my cousins, my father, and my mother. So actually, they all have the entrepreneur spirit. It is not a strain that is within myself. I'm discovering it. But yes, all of them have created new concepts and taken large risks. So I've admired seeing that growing up.
And Jennifer, did you ever think you would actually go ahead and do it and make the leap and work for yourself, or was it something that you thought maybe? But
No, it's funny because my father has been, throughout our childhood, has always been trying to pressure my brother and I to take over his business. And we've always been pushing off to the other. So no, it is not something I ever thought of. I'd always thrived in large organizations with lots of structure. I always liked kind of challenges, but always within an established organization. It's not something I thought was for me. But the opportunity came. And I think it's when I realized, am I not looking at this because I'm afraid of it? Have I been so comfortable in what I know that I'm fearful of something? And I think that's what finally made me pivot, is I don't want to regret that I didn't try something because of fear and because of the unknown. And that's what then led me to constantly want to do it. I mean, it took me a while to get there, because I started thinking about it in 2014. Then I went back to corporate for 3 years. And then it was like another 3 months. I even went on a 100-mile journey to go like really delve inside myself to understand. But when I finally got there, I realized I want to see if I can do this. And in my search for purpose, I realized I would have to push myself beyond what I had done before.
So it's interesting. And I mentioned I own my own business that I started in college. I quit the corporate world in 2006 to work for myself full time, but I was in my 20s and I didn't have a family, and it was a relatively low risk at that point, is how I looked at it, because I didn't have a bunch of people depending on me. I ended up selling the business and going back to the corporate world, which is where I know you guys from. You're doing it at a very different time. You're not doing this in your 20s, and that's no offense to either of you on your age, but you just both mentioned you had decades of experience. So how was it leaving stable corporate jobs at this point in your career to go start something? Like, how did walk us through that process and how it went down? So I think, Jennifer, I believe you started, and then Ray, you followed. So Jennifer, how were you the first one to take the leap? How did this happen?
So we had been doing this on our side of our desk. It was a hobby, evenings, weekends, holidays. And we realized if we really want to pursue this, one of us was we had to dedicate full time to it. It wasn't sufficient. We had some partnerships, and it was very difficult to manage when we could only do it in the evenings. So we realized if we're going to continue, one of us had to start. Ray has children going into college. I had a little bit more flexibility. So I realized, why don't I take the leap first to see if we can get some traction, do a lot, build the platform, do some testing, run a pilot program to see if it's something that we can follow through on. Mm-hmm. So that's why I went first. I think the hardest things for me was this feeling that I would be letting go of a career that I had spent over 20 years building. And in my mind, it was like that game Chutes and Ladders. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
I had worked all the way up, and I felt like I was going to go take that slide and go all the way down to the bottom. So for me, it was, I'm leaving what I've built to start something where I don't know if it's going to be successful or not.
See, I think that the interesting thing though is like when I did it, I was really young. I had very little experience. You have all this great experience that you've accumulated throughout your career that's going to help you be successful in the role. So while it is probably terrifying, I think that was a big help. So before we go to Ray and hear about, how we went from Jennifer first and then to Ray, can you just explain to the audience what is the concept behind Seedership? Because when you guys told me about it, it was like nothing I'd ever heard of before. So can you just share with the audience, like, how do you describe it to people and what it is and why it exists before we hear about Ray's journey into working with you full time?
Go for it.
So we wanted to basically at its simplest form is in our corporate lives, we saw corporations taking what good that they did. They called it corporate social responsibility. They used that to help promote their brand. Couple that with the fact that, as Jennifer had mentioned, she has small businesses in her family. I have small businesses in my family. And what we wanted to do was take that concept of corporate social responsibility and create something that allowed small local businesses to be able to tell their story and actually see the impact that they're making in the community. And it kind of goes back to when we first started this. We didn't know exactly what we wanted it to evolve into. We knew we wanted it to center around kindness. And what we found is that all of these small local businesses are doing so much in their community. They're making a big impact, but yet there was nothing that was easy to use, simple to help them tell that story. So
real quick, when you say they're doing things in the community, can you give some examples to the audience? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so they're constantly asked to give back, and they give back as part of their business model.
I gotcha.
So, part of what they have is they have relationships with their customers in the local community. They often see them face to face, and these customers are walking in their store and asking them. And we were at a business event and did a survey, and 2/3 of those businesses said they're asked to donate back to the community more than 5 times a month.
Wow.
And many of them do it, but necessarily it's not visible. So we wanted to help create something to allow them to make that more visible, authentic, and transparent.
The level that you get at corporate, it's more of they get asked to donate gift certificates or their time, their employees are donating their time, or small donations here or there to sponsor various events, the local festival, a youth sports team. So they do a lot in a smaller. So we wanted to help them aggregate what they do so that they could see the entire impact and realize it is a large investment that they're putting in the community. So the first thing was helping them track and measure what they give. And the second was how can they share what they give and make it visible? So it's not something that kind of just ends at the end of that activity or event. How do you keep it top of mind year round?
And I love that because from large corporations, they have organizations that do this, right? They have a civic affairs organization. They have a corporate responsibility organization that's able to do this. But small businesses, and you guys are living it now, right? You do everything, right? And while this probably sounds like something that, I'm sure if you ask some of these small businesses, do you need this? They're probably like, yeah, of course we need this. But they never thought they could actually make it happen, right? So I love the concept. So, and I just wanted you guys to share that just so people kind of understood what the platform was, because it is so unique, and I don't think there's anything else out there like this. So Ray, Jennifer takes the plunge. You start as a hobby. Jennifer joins full time. And Jennifer, what year did you start doing it full time? When was that?
So I started June 18th was when I left my corporate job. So 19th. So I started like.
Not that you remember the date at all.
I remember. Right? 2018, June 18, 2018 is when I started full time. And God, that was tense. We had a family vacation planned and I stayed behind because I was going to cram learning how to do product development in 1 week.
What was, so that first day full time at Seedership, do you remember what that was like?
I had to set up all of our kind of basic operations, the technology that we needed to work effectively with our developers. So it was like the voice over IP system. My God, it was a plethora. They'd given me a list of all these technologies I needed to set up. So here I was doing research to understand what I was setting up. So that was the first thing. And then it was getting out there, giving feedback to the designers so they knew what to build. So I basically called around everyone that I was a customer of to set up meetings, to go do one-on-ones and learn as much as possible.
That's so cool. I mean, I love getting that feedback directly from the customer is so important. So that was 2018. So you start full time, and then how did it evolve to the point where this year in 2019, Ray was able to make the leap and join full time? Like, how did that, over the past year, how did that change?
Yeah, so we did some test events where we brought small businesses together to continue kind of testing the concept. As Jennifer was out kind of showing people what we were starting to build, we started to gain a lot of interest, and people were curious about what we were doing, and even got to the point where, without even marketing, she sold a handful of accounts. So we knew that there was something in this. We knew that there was a business model that we could center around this concept. And so then we started talking about, how do we spend more time with it? Do we want to hire someone to help support Jennifer? When do I want to join? Because I think when we started it, I didn't really think that I would actually join it for quite some time. We thought that this,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we thought this would be kind of a slow build. We wouldn't gain as much traction and interest as we did. And so then whenever Jennifer was kind of coming back, sharing all of the feedback, opportunities to go out and speak, it became apparent that there was some opportunity for us. And so then we started talking about, all right, well, is there an opportunity for me to join and spend more time helping to build this? Because we needed to just spend a lot more time in product development, gaining feedback, et cetera. So in April of this year, an opportunity presented itself where I was able to leave the corporate world and join Jennifer. And I can remember my first day, walking into our office, which, is a small office, and walking from sort of a big job where I had instant credibility when I walked into a room, to going out and starting to meet with folks.
Yeah.
And having people basically think that it felt like they thought I knew nothing, and they were sharing very basic things with me because they didn't know anything about my background. So that was a big, hit to the ego, walking into some of those meetings and people, talking about, well, marketing on Facebook, or, do you have a business plan? Have you thought about this? In order to grow your business, here's a couple of things that you may want to do. So that was a big change for me, walking out of that big corporate world into starting my own organization and basically having zero credibility after building a pretty successful career.
Yeah, I can imagine that being very different and very interesting at the same time. So why don't we pivot, and I'll ask, because I mentioned this earlier. So your husband and wife working together, living together. That's a lot of together time, as you can probably imagine. So how does that go, right? Like, how do the two of you work together? How do you decide who does what? I'm assuming, obviously, Jennifer, you have strengths, from your background, and Ray, you have strengths from your background. So how do you decide who does what, and divide, and conquer responsibilities and tasks you have to get done?
I would say it's been a learning process for sure. It took a while. In the beginning, the first couple months, we had so many different approaches that we had. We had like Post-it system. We had a whiteboard. We had all these pad sheets everywhere. We tried, technology. I think now we finally have it. It's been the last couple, like maybe 2 or 3 months, where we actually have a system that works. We regularly have a cadence of meetings. Some of them are like planning ahead, long term. Some of our week to week. The others are strategy meetings. But it took a while to determine. But we did also separate based off of areas of strengths. So I'm responsible for sales, marketing, communications, kind of events, partnerships, and support on strategy when I'm providing kind of customer feedback.
Right.
And then Ray is responsible for financial, legal, product development, and roadmap, accounting. What else have I left off?
Sweeping the floor.
That's the fun
operations.
of being a small business owner. You get to do everything.
That's great. Yeah.
we're both aware of what's going on, but it comes down to when there's a decision or a tiebreaker, the person that owns that area kind of take the lead with it.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
It did take us a couple of months to, well, maybe more than a couple of months to get into a groove, because you're, like you said, we're constantly, we're working together, we're at home together. And so we got to the point where, you know, even at the at-home moments, it was constantly turned on. We're constantly talking about the business, trying to figure out what do we need to do next? How do we keep momentum going? I think it actually forced us to become better communicators, which seems maybe just a little bit weird, but it's forced us to be able to talk about things, because obviously when you're working with your spouse, you don't want to disappoint them. And, you know, in the entrepreneurial world, you hear a lot more no's than yeses, and there's constant rejection. And so whenever that's happening, you definitely don't want to disappoint, you know, the person that not only your business partner, but that you're married to. So that was something that we had to work through and develop a support system to make sure that we were managing. Sometimes I can be much faster, you know, coming from the corporate world where I had big teams and I could get a lot of things done by having other people do it, and moving into that environment where it's just, you know, Jennifer and I, was a big learning for me as well, sort of within the relationship, because I had to get used to things not happening according to my timetable that I was used to in the past as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think my business was with three friends, and that was hard enough because, again, we wanted to make sure we stayed friends, and, you know, we didn't talk about outside of work. So I could absolutely see how that would be a challenge for the two of you living together and being married and everything. So I'm glad you've kind of worked that out and gotten to a point where it works well. So the business is still relatively young, but I want to hear from both of you. And this differs between each of you. You know, biggest accomplishment to date since you started the business, and maybe the biggest learning opportunity to date since you started the business. What would you share?
First.
Sure, I'll go first. I'll start with the learning opportunity. I think in the beginning, we were getting so much feedback and there were so many opportunities that we actually overextended ourselves and built way too much. So we actually turned off, in the summer of this year, we turned off half the platform that we built.
Oh, wow.
Because we were focused on small businesses, local businesses, and we had a whole nother part of the platform that was developed for nonprofits. So I actually sat down with someone that had started and sold a few businesses, and the very first thing that they said was, you're trying to do too much, and you got to narrow your focus in order to gain traction with one of your constituents before you start thinking about building more.
That's good advice.
Yeah, that was my biggest learning, was we tried to solve too many problems at once. I think the biggest accomplishment, I would say, we went to an event and people actually had heard of us, which was, you know,
nice.
It was kind of interesting. They're like, oh yeah, we've heard of Cedarship. And I was like, oh really? Wow. Okay. You know, so that was kind of interesting, and actually felt good that our name was getting around and people actually recognized the name and knew a little bit about what we were doing, what we were trying to do. How about you?
The biggest accomplishment and the biggest learning. I think one of the biggest accomplishments is, you know, I was so used to working in corporate, telling the strategy of the company, and the story is always evolving. But it was like I walked into something where there was already an existing story. I was always just evolving it, morphing it, making it relevant to the external world. But it was never starting one from scratch, plus one that is my baby, right? So I think for a long time, I struggled with how to communicate it. And I did not do a good job. We participated in a pitch event where we had 5 minutes to tell our story. So that was hard. You know, how do you condense what you've been working on basically for 2-3 years into 5 minutes? But when we did that pitch and we won, I think that was the first time, because it was a room full of strangers who were there judging you. And they understood what we were doing, why we were doing it, the business case for doing it, and saw that there was value in that. So that was the first time I realized, okay, we had a turning point. Now we're starting to be able to tell the story in an effective way. Learning is, I think for me, in corporate world, when people came to me, I had to turn things over, perfect final condition. Here, it's ready to go, ready to be executed. As an entrepreneur, I have any given day 10 things to do. I don't have the time to focus and make everything perfect. So do I want to accomplish one, or do I want to get 10 moving? So it's learning when it's good enough, because to be honest, nothing has ever been final. It's always moving and evolving and changing. So it's having to have the discipline to realize where, okay, this is good to move forward with. And that's something I'm obviously still working on.
No, I think those are great examples. And I love, Ray, I love how you mentioned that you turned off, parts of the platform for the nonprofits. So you pivoted and narrowed your focus. And I've done that with, some stuff that I've done with the nonprofit that my wife and I have. And I can absolutely tell you that you don't set out obviously thinking you're going to do that, but then when you finally get there and you make that change and you're like, oh, this is so obvious, right? So it's just interesting how things kind of evolve as you go, as you learn. I think why you guys have been successful, why I think you'll continue to be successful, is because you're willing to listen and make those changes, right? So if you're not saying no, we can't evolve, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons you guys have probably been so successful so quickly.
Yeah, and it's hard to turn those things off because we saw a specific need. But my hope is that whenever we're ready to turn them back on, it actually allows us to progress much quicker. So we needed to narrow our focus, but it was hard to go in and actually say, and Jennifer even kind of pushed me on this to say we need to narrow even harder. We need to turn things off. And then at the same time, though, she was coming back with, hey, I just met with someone and they said that this is needed and we need to build this. And I'm like, well, we just decided to turn that side off. Why do we want to build more stuff? So there was a constant battle even taking place while we were doing that.
So, just to wrap up the conversation about what you guys are doing and why you're doing it, it seems like, it's the small business community, at least here in the U.S., is such a huge part of how this country was built, right? When you worked in the corporate world, where I work today, there's a lot of large corporations, but there are so many small businesses that make up the fabric of all our communities. It's great to see you guys doing something that's helping those small business owners. So I guess my last question about Seedership is, you're a small business owner, you want to get more information, you want to hear what it's all about. Is going to your website the best way to get in touch with you? What's the best way for people to learn about the platform?
Yeah, so first step, definitely visit us at Seedership.com. There's a lot of new information out there. We just launched a brand new version of our website at the beginning of November. If there's more that you need, we're happy to talk to you. You can reach out to me at ray@Seedership.com. Jennifer is Jennifer@Seedership.com. We kept it kind of simple. More than happy to talk with folks about what they're doing in their local community and figuring out how we can help.
And you guys are on social media as well. So and I appreciate you sharing, the promos for this conversation on social media. So whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching the recording of this, we'll make sure we put the Seedership.com website in the show description for everyone to get in touch with you guys. So whether it's on YouTube or it's on the podcast or here on LinkedIn, everyone will be able to see that Seedership.com is the website. So again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat today. I always close the podcast because it is called the Full Potential Podcast or live show, whatever you want to call it, because I'm doing both at the same time. I always ask my guests, what is your advice that's helped you guys reach your full potential that you can share with the audience? So what is one or two things that you think you've done in your careers that's helped you be so successful that you would want to share?
Yeah. You want to go first?
Let me think about it.
All right. It's a really good question, Nick. And I think I would go back to maybe where I started with the GPS model. I think when I was in the corporate world, a lot of individuals would come into my office and say, hey, I'm looking for some career advice. And the very first thing that I would ask them is, well, where do you want to go? And I would say most of the time they would say, I really don't know. And my response would be, I can't help you get somewhere if you don't know where you want to go.
Right.
So until you can tell me where that is, I don't know how to help you. And so it goes back to sort of that GPS model and actually having a destination for your career. And like a GPS, it doesn't have to be your final endpoint. You can change that. It gives you multiple ways to get there, but at least have a destination and keep it very broad and general. But if you can at least target a place that you want to go, it helps you it keeps you on track and gives you an opportunity to make stops along the way, but you're still focused and you have an endpoint and a true north.
Well said. I like that a lot.
And with me, I think I'm going to have two. So the first one is, I can remember I've always had like platforms I wanted to reach. So in the beginning, it was, I want to work in the biggest PR firm. Then I want to work, support CEOs. It was all, even my personal life, it was, I need to get to 26.2 miles. It was always a destination, but I was always so driven to achieve it that I didn't enjoy the process along the way. So this is the first time that I realized I should be relishing in all these setbacks and the learnings and the experiences we're having to enjoy the process of being an entrepreneur, versus so focused on saying, no, we're only successful when we scale and when we have X amount of customers. I need to enjoy every step along the way. The other point I was going to mention is that the experience just showed me that I actually am capable of doing a lot more than I had thought I had in my life. So being open-minded and willing to push yourself to try new things, because I've learned new things that I enjoy that I never, ever would have thought was something that I would be good at or possible for me. So I think now as I reflect, I don't just define myself as just a communications person. I mean, I really feel like I'm evolving into something much more.
Yeah, and I think again, well said. But I think you have to, Jennifer. I think based off of being an entrepreneur, you have to become good at so many different things that where before you were more specialized in what you did in the corporate world. Now you have to be, I don't want to say a generalist, but you have to just be better at a wider variety of things. So again, thank you so much. And I'll leave you this, Ray, I know you've been inspiring people. I know for a long time, I've had people that you used to work with tell me you used to send a daily email to, I don't know how big the distribution list got, but I heard it was pretty large. And every day you would write and share some inspirational bit of knowledge with that email distribution. So I know that you've inspired a lot of people in the corporate world. It sounds like you're inspiring a lot of people in the entrepreneurship world as well. And, I wish you both the best of luck. And I really appreciate you guys making time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you having us on here and love what you're doing with this as well. And wish you the best of luck with your live show and all of the stuff that you're doing to help grow people to their fullest potential. Well,
I think you guys have a great career story, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because I think it's so unique and what you're doing is so cool. So cedarship.com, we'll put it in the URL in the show notes and everything. And thank you again, everyone, for watching tonight. And we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys. If you'd like to learn more about our movement, please visit our website, fullpotentialmovement.com. You can also find us on social media. We have an Instagram, Facebook, and a YouTube. Thank you again, and we hope you come back to hear another episode.